Thanks for coming tonight from wherever you come from. My name's Tony Dabb. I'm the course leader for politics at QE, and I've been the course leader here for about 5 years now. And hopefully I can tell you everything you need to know about studying with us, about politics, and about what you can expect to see. There are some things, though, it being the nature of the subject, that I really can't tell you about what we'll be studying. And I think that's one of the best things about the subject. We've got a syllabus like everybody else has, and we've got a series of things which will be examined on at the end of 2 years. But I think the best thing that students find is that there are a whole series of things happening week by week and month by month, which we could never have predicted. You'll have seen some of them on the news more recently in the last couple of weeks in America. The second impeachment of Donald Trump, or the storming of the Capitol, or things that have happened with COVID, or things that have happened when Boris Johnson tried to close down Parliament a little while ago. These things are things which give us lots of opportunities to talk about the subject. And that's why it's a bit of a voyage of discovery. Hopefully there are going to be quite a few people asking some questions about the types of things that we study in the subject, and I'm more than happy to answer as many as I can in what I think is a relatively short amount of time for us as well. Okay, so I've got one which is about what do we study on the course, and it's a really good place to start with. We've got three what we call components. They're 3 papers, and broadly speaking, it's got a big section about the UK. We call the course comparative politics because it's the UK and the USA. So the first year has lots of things about us doing politics in the UK, where we make politicians do what we want them to. And we're really keen on you understanding that it's not really all about Boris Johnson and Matt Hancock and other people in Parliament, though that's part of it. A really big part of it is, how do we join pressure groups in order to make them execute policies which we would prefer? What happens when we vote, and how come some people vote for some things, some different classes of people? Why don't some people vote at all? How democratic is the UK, and what could we do to try and make it more democratic? And then another part of the subject is about America. We compare American politics and say, are they more democratic than us? Is a president more powerful than a prime minister? Would we be better off having, literally today I've been talking to the second years about the Supreme Court, would we be better off having a Supreme Court like the one in America, or a system like the one we've got here? And in the middle of that, what we've got is a chunk of studying about political ideas. So everybody who's involved in politics is informed by having a kind of philosophy about what they think should happen to the world. If you're a conservative, you kind of think that things should pretty much stay as they are. But if you're a socialist or a feminist, then you probably think that things aren't very equal or fair, and you should do some things to change them. And we look at those ideas and try and work out why they've changed and how relevant they are to politics today. Okay, so hopefully that's a bit of a very quick sketch of the 3 big chunks of material that we look at. We've got lots of questions already, so I want to try and cover as many of them as we can. Do class debates happen? Oh goodness, I hope so. And almost every lesson, I hope that we've said something where we've opened an opportunity for you to tell us what you think. And I think that I think for me is the best thing about teaching politics, is that when I go in, I'm thinking about something that's been on the news, and the first thing I want to know is, what do you think about it, and what should we do about it? And I think one of the nicest things that students say about the subject is that it's a space which is not like normal classrooms perhaps, or normal spaces in the everyday world, because we actually invite people to disagree with each other in a nice place where we can respect each other's opinions, but we can actually give ourselves time to think about, why do you think that, and could you justify that, and then invite other people to challenge it if they want to as well. So we do have lots of debates in the classroom, and then we use those. Typically we have a kind of sequence of lessons where we'll do something like 4 lessons, where it will be 1 where we'll learn something about some content and introduce it and see why it's relevant. We'll talk about that then as well. The second one, we'll begin to think about what the pros and cons might be. The third one, we'll begin to think about, okay, how would we begin to apply this to an exam question, for example? And in a fourth one, we might practice a little bit of writing or some skills. Okay, so hopefully that's answered your question. I've got another one here, which is, do we go on any trips? Yeah, in normal world, when we're not kind of hindered by a global pandemic, we're really proud of the offer that we've got for learning outside of the classroom. And if you've seen any of the things that we've got on our Politics Google site, which you can access through the college website as well, you'll see that our big thing for the second year, which is literally where we should be this week. Normally, this week, right now, I'd be in Washington, DC with about 24 students, about half of the second year, and we'd be in the Supreme Court, and we'd be meeting people from different pressure groups and seeing all the sites. So, I mean, obviously I can't promise, we don't know what's going to happen with the pandemic, but we hope very much that by the time that you're in the second year, that trip will be up and running again. We'll be able to go and do those things. In the first year, you don't have to wait until the second year to do things. In the first year, we go to Parliament and we go and visit our MP and we tour around the Houses of Parliament, and you get the opportunity usually either to see the Commons in session and to see the Lords in session, spot some famous faces if you're lucky. We normally see at least a few. Also to quiz the RMP. Obviously it's Peter Gibson at the moment. In the past it's been Jenny Chapman. And we get a chance to do a series of workshops with people who work in Parliament too. We see some of the sites, we go past Downing Street and so on. We've had some other kind of engagements of things that we do as well in terms of not just trips, I suppose, but inviting people in. So we often have the University of Lancaster Professor Matt Johnson, who's a specialist in international relations. He comes to talk to us. Dr. Martin Farr, senior lecturer in contemporary politics, contemporary history at Newcastle. He comes to talk about how the modern politics that we've got is informed as well. So I hope that's answered your question there. What do you have to get at GCSE to do politics? Great question. And the answer is, we want as much as possible to be an open access course. So long as you get a 4 in maths and a 4 in English, like most of the courses at QE, then you will have the things that you need in order for us to take you to try and achieve your target at A level. It is a course which it relies on English skills. It relies on the ability to write an essay. But we hope that through the course of the 2 years, then we're going to do lots of work practicing and thinking about how we can communicate our ideas and write in such a way that we can earn some credit for it. So lots and lots of people come in with a whole range of GCSE results, from people who've got lots of 9s and are kind of heading towards A's and A stars, and people who've perhaps got like more of a mixed bag. But by and large, we get everybody to the target that they want to be in. Okay, thank you. The next one is, do we learn about legislation and more so about political landscapes and standpoints? I think I'd say all of those. I mean, you're right to focus on legislation and law and the idea that lots of the things we're doing, we talk about the rule of law, and we're interested in how Parliament works. And when Parliament makes a law, what happens to it then? It's like the process, the mechanics of it being revised in the Lords, or maybe it goes to committee as well. But you're right, and probably we're equally interested in the political viewpoints that led to that law in the first place. I would say, I guess, probably 80% of what we do is more about those other things. What is the context in which we're working at the moment? An example might be thinking about America right now. There are lots of things where we might consider what Congress is going to do now that Joe Biden's president and it's going to pass a series of laws about COVID and all the rest of it. But the wider context of a deeply polarized America, in which, having just come through a scarring election, whether those laws get passed depends upon people's viewpoints, depends upon whether Republicans are prepared to allow Joe Biden to do what he wants to do. That's going to be our interesting stuff there, hopefully. So a mixture of all. Okay. This is an interesting one. Do we study politics in the past, or is it current? And it's got to be both. And I guess the reason is because when we talk about things, again, America's not a bad example, because there are lots and lots of things going on there right now. But Donald Trump's about to be impeached in the Senate, and he'll be the first ever president to be impeached twice and to be put on trial twice in the Senate. So in order to understand that process, in order for us, our students, to know why that matters, of course, we're going to talk about that this is this week's news. In fact, news that hasn't even happened yet. But we're also going to think about the context of, okay, well, when was the last time someone was impeached? With Trump, it turns out not that long ago. But we go back to the 1990s and look at the Clinton impeachment, and we make a comparison between them. And I think whilst we also talk about lots and lots of other things that have happened and where we got our Constitution from, the American Constitution as well, probably we're thinking about everything that's happened in the last 20 or 30 years is our field for looking at things. But you're absolutely right. We're constantly talking about things that happen this week, things that have happened in the very recent past, in the last couple of months, and then trying to explain them by looking slightly further back too. I hope that's the answer to that one. Okay. Do we discuss or cover communism at all? We do, actually. And this might be something you're enthused about, or it might be something you kind of want to be critical of. And I mentioned that we look at some political ideas midway through our course. So right at the beginning of the second year, we look at socialism, and we look at the different types of socialism, and we start with Karl Marx and Frederick Engels and revolutionary socialists, and we look at the way in which then other socialists have come along and have criticised that or have moved on from that, and look at the ways in which they disagree with each other, and the impact that that has on contemporary politics as well. So absolutely. And in fact, I suppose because people have been talking about Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in America, and to some extent about Corbynism here, then it's become something which is, more current than it was perhaps 10 or 15 years ago. So short answer to that one is yes. Yeah. Okay. Do we learn about other nations other than the UK and the US? We've got to mention them, and especially when something has happened where it's something that we need to talk about in the news. So it might be something about the rise of the far right in Germany or Italy, and we want to make comparisons about why that's happening here and might not be happening in the same way. Why it's happening in those countries might not be happening in the same way here. I'll be honest that when we come to talk about the exam and what you need to write about, and your best knowledge has got to be about the UK and the US, but that doesn't mean that we can't also talk about examples and be kind of aware of how the world is. Quite a lot of our students, when they finish, they've come to us as kind of new students, and they don't really know what the topic is, what the subject's about. And after a while, they think, oh, I'm going to quite fancy doing this at university. And lots of them go off and do politics and international relations courses. And so it's quite good for us to be able to talk about things. And I mentioned Matt Johnson from University of Lancaster. When he comes in, he talks about international relations as well. Okay, thanks very much for that one. Are all the exams in the second year? Yeah. In as much as in college, all subjects have a kind of an assessment scheme in which we're kind of regularly assessing you. And there are some formal assessments in a normal college year, midway through the year, the first year, and at the end of the first year. But as far as we're concerned, for our grade, the grade you're going to get in the politics A level is going to come at the end of the 2-year process, in which there'll just be 3 2-hour exams, and those will be the ways in which you're graded. So there's no coursework. I suppose that is what you're really asking. It's not modular. There's no coursework. There's no early exams. Everything, we've got all the time for the 2 years to get better at, or get perfect writing our questions for the last exams at the end of 2 years. Thanks very much for that one. What sort of questions do you get in the exam? By and large, they're all essay questions. And I think that this is probably another one of the features of the course which I think will set you up really nicely for university, that when you go into uni, you'll often be writing 2,000, 2,500 word essays. And often our students come back, or they get in touch afterwards and say, well, we found it really helpful, the way in which we worked on structuring essay questions so that we could answer the types of essay questions that we're heading towards. They're 30-mark, 45-minute essays, usually about 4 sides or something, depending on how much you write. And they find that the way of thinking about a question and structuring an answer is something that helps them when they get to university. So most of them are kind of those types of essay questions. There are just a couple in the third paper of slightly shorter ones, which would be like a 1-side answer, and they're about 15 minutes. But other than that, essay questions. How are we examined? I'm hoping that I've kind of like covered that one in the 3 papers, and they've got essays on them as well. Okay. What are the class sizes like? Good. So the biggest classes we've got in the first year are 24 people. And in a normal year, when we're kind of normally set up, that means 6 groups of 4 people. And then what we tend to do is move those groups around. So we're often talking as a big class, and then we're sometimes talking as a small group of people. And what that allows us to do is, if we're a bit shy, we can kind of share ideas with just people on our table, but it also means we've got opportunities to have big kind of class debate things as well. Good stuff. How much are the trips? That is a good question, isn't it? And as much as possible, we want to make them as accessible as possible. So the London ones are very accessible, partly because we're helped by Parliament with the transport costs. So I think in the last year, we didn't go last year because of COVID, but the year before that, it was about £35. The American one, we go to Washington, DC for a week. And obviously that's got its own, so that's staying in a hotel for a week, right in the center of DC and all the rest of it. We've got it down to £850 last year. And where there are students who need a bit of help, then there's a college access fund as well. So we can negotiate about, or we can do what we can to make it as accessible for people as possible. Could you give me an example of an exam question? Yeah, I can. So the first years, I've just been doing one on electoral systems. There are lots of people who think that the first past the post system in the UK isn't very fair because with a look at the election, they'll say 43% of people voted for Conservatives, but they've got more than 60% of the seats in Parliament. How can that be fair? So a typical question would be, evaluate the view that the first past the post electoral system should be replaced with a proportional system. Or if you wanted another one, the second years are currently doing something about the American Supreme Court at the moment. Evaluate the view that Supreme Court justices are politicians in robes. And that kind of thing makes us have an argument in favour and against. Okay, great question, a very specific one, which is politics an A-level or a B.Tech? It's just an A-level. You know, what I'd say as well is, it's a very kind of well-respected, kind of prestigious A-level when we're thinking about applying for university as well. Do we learn about pressure groups? Absolutely. One of the big things we've been thinking about this year is the nature of Black Lives Matter and the movement that took place in the summer and what impact that has then had and continues to have on politics now. And that's to do with pressure group politics. But we've also been talking about Extinction Rebellion and the way in which they've been criticised by the government as being a kind of a threat to civil order and you know, an organised crime group or whatever all sorts of other people call them. So we spend quite a bit of time looking at pressure groups and the way in which they might make democracy better, or they might make some problems for it. Will we learn about the American amendments and what they mean? Absolutely. By the time you leave here, you'll be constitutional experts in the US Constitution. And in fact, we don't wait until the second year to do that because we want to compare it with the first year with the UK Constitution. We're constantly talking about it. Almost from day one, we'll be talking about the American Bill of Rights, for example. Do you have to know a lot about politics already? Absolutely not. And I think this, again, is one of the best things about it, because probably unlike most subjects you've studied and in school, this is a novel subject. Everybody comes to it new. And because most of it hasn't happened yet, then everybody is challenged and confronted with new things and then has to think about learning along the way. And I think what that means is that everybody starts from a kind of level playing field. Even if it seems sometimes as though when people are talking about it, oh, they think, well, they seem to know a lot about politics. They won't, and it'll be really easy to pick it up as we go along. What do you recommend before taking politics as books to read? Now, I have actually put on the Politics Google site, it would be a long list to do now, and I think I'm about to run out of time because I'm being told on my chat thing that we're about to run out. But there is a list on the Politics Google site to have a look on things that you could do to find out a bit more about the subject, including reading some books. What subjects does politics go well with? That includes all sorts of things. We've got lots of people who do history, law, English, sociology, but we've also got people who do music and maths and things as well. And what's your favourite topic to teach? I've got to say it is right now the US Supreme Court. I'm having great fun thinking about the way in which whether the US Supreme Court should be able to make decisions which effectively choose who the president is, for example. And how many questions on the exams? I think I've done that one where we've got, okay, 3 papers and the 2-hour paper, so really 3 essays to do. And then I am running just to the end, I think, where I've got what careers can this A-level lead to? And that can include We've had people go off to do journalism, to work in government, to work for think tanks, to become teachers and academics and things as well, to be researchers. So there are lots of opportunities. Okay, I think there I've run out of time, and unfortunately that leaves me to have to wrap up. What I'd say is please get in touch. And so if you have a look on the politics Google site, which you can access through the QE website, then you'll find my name there and you can send me an email. And also, I'd remind you that when you're making a decision, if you're thinking of joining us, then please go have a look at the application section on the QE website, and consider taking politics. Okay, thanks very much for joining us.